So welcome to the Installer Plaza and our final great debate for this year. And we're delighted to be sponsored by our friends at Valentuous, celebrating 150 years, their sesquicentennial, if you didn't know, and I only learned the other day that's what it is. But we're going to look at off-grid heating debate now. The current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, made headlines last year when he delayed the ban on new oil and LPG boiler installations to 2035. It's generally accepted the UK will have to adopt a range of technologies to reach net zero as the weather, housing and stock and infrastructure vary across the country. So heat pumps will no doubt have a part to play, but there are other technologies that help decarbonise off-grid homes and buildings. And our expert panel is going to discuss all of this. So I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves one by one, starting with contestant number one. Tell us who you are and where you come from.
Hi, my name is Chris Goggin from Rinnai, UK. We're involved with the World LPGA and looking into renewable liquid fuels.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Malcolm Farrow. I'm Head of Public Affairs at OFTEC. We are a trade association for the liquid fuel sector, and we also run a competent person scheme for heating engineers.
Hi, I'm Neil Sawyers, Commercial Technical
Talk that
Manager.
nice and close.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
Neil Sawyers, Commercial Technical Manager for Current UK. So we manufacture oil-fired boilers that run both on kerosene and on HVO oil. We manufacture hybrid systems as well as R32 and R290 heat pumps.
And I'm Sophia Haywood. I'm Director of Advocacy and Communications for a company called Dimeta. We're a renewable and recycled carbon DME producer. I'll be talking a little bit more about what DME is later on, but we're looking at putting production facilities across the UK, Europe and United States.
Brilliant. And if I could just remind you all, just hold the mic nice and close, almost touching your lips, then we can hear what you've got to say. Now, look, I don't want to start off too controversially, so let's start with this. Rishi Sunak moved the goalposts a bit with the ban on new oil and LPG boiler installations from 2026 to 2035. I'd love to know what your views are on this. I'm not going to start with you, Neil, because I'll let you let the steam come out your ears first. But who'd like to pick up on that first?
Not me then.
No. Go on, Sophia.
Maybe I can take it.
Nice and close to it.
Yeah, so look, I think that, across all of the different types of heating technologies that we need, having a just transition is a theme that we talk about a lot when we think about this path to net zero. However, I think with the delay in the ban, what we also then need in turn is greater policy certainty for renewable liquid gases, renewable liquid fuels. We've got a consultation that was meant to come out this year. Now with the election and everything going on, will we get it? I would definitely like to see the new UK government, whatever form that may be, is really then pushing this consultation to give the clarity, because I think it's all been recognised we need a mix of solutions. But if we want to get the investors to really invest significant amounts of money in these production facilities, we need to get that policy certainty. And at the moment, government's holding that up.
Right, okay, Neil, go on.
Well, it is barking mad, isn't it? The number of U-turns that this government's
Nice and close,
made.
Neil. Even closer, that's it.
Do you want to come and hold it?
No, well, I will hold it if you want. But we want to hear you, though.
How confusing a message for the consumer who thinks he's got to make the change to heat pumps, renewable technologies, and then all of a sudden given another 12 years of life to continue to fit gas and oil boilers in their existing dwellings, and at the same time turn around to the manufacturers of those products and say, you have to sell more heat pumps or we're going to fine you. It just doesn't make sense. It's confusing to the market. It's confusing to the consumer who doesn't really know, can I now fit a boiler or am I going to be penalised further down the road when I come to sell my property? It is completely barking mad. And unfortunately, we're going to the polls next week. And I don't know what the alternative is to what Rishi's saying. Unless anyone knows here today what the Labour manifesto says, I don't think there's anything clear.
Okay, we can't get over political, but I mean, would you put a bet on? No, I'm not going to say that. But but thank you. I mean, the thing I hate about you is you always sit on the fence. Malcolm, what's your view?
Well, I do have a little bit of an insight into what Labour are planning, because they have, Ed Miliband announced last weekend that they're going to scrap the 2035 ban as well. They're talking about having less regulation and more incentives to consumers. And I suppose in a way, that sounds very a consumer-friendly message. And I think the problem that we've had actually is that the rural off-grid community were completely unaware of the proposed 2026 ban. And if you want to deliver decarbonisation, you need to have the citizen on board, don't you? You want people to be aware of what the plan is and in agreement with it. But the previous government didn't tell them anything. So we've had hundreds of conversations with householders who were completely unaware of the 2026 ban, and there's no way to do things. And I think it was inevitable that the government had to change that, and it's very good that they did. But it's essential that we still make progress with decarbonisation, isn't it? So we really need a new plan, and we need more support for consumers and more choice, frankly.
Chris?
Yeah, well, everybody's approached this from the kind of domestic angle, and the 2026 ban applies to domestic, but within that regulation, it was 2024 for commercial buildings above 1,000 per square metre, so that would have come into force now. So that would have forced commercial building owners and end users basically to sleepwalk into a disaster, whereby they wouldn't have the infrastructure or practical, economical or technically viable solutions to keep their businesses running and going. With that sort of policy, it also starves innovation. And one of the big things that we've been working with the likes of Dimeta and Liquid Gas UK on is renewable liquid fuels. And I think when you begin to starve innovation, you begin to limit the possibilities for decarbonisation. So I think the ban on the ban, as it were, or the delay on the ban, is eminently sensible.
Do you think, let's go to Fantasyland a minute, had 2026 stayed, would we have been able to meet that target?
I don't think we would have, no. I think that it was to the points that Malcolm said, and previously I used to work for the UK Association for LPG, Liquid Gas UK, same thing. There was no awareness, there was no real desire, and there was no, also I think that at that point in time, government was very much sticking into this as a one-size-fits-all electrification approach and it will be fine. Whereas now I think there's this kind of recognizing that we need a mixed solutions, but it can't just be just recognizing we need that mix. It's then actually really putting policy in place to support it.
But if there was lack of awareness then, that means there's lack of awareness now, doesn't it? I mean...
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't think consumers are any more clued up now than they were two or 3 years ago when this plan was first mooted. I mean, Sophia's absolutely right. I mean, when the government announced the 2026 or 2024 for non-domestic plan, if they'd been thinking about putting all the potential options on the table, then there's just a chance it might have worked. But having effectively a one-size-fits-all solution, it was always doomed to failure.
Right. Okay. And how on earth is the consumer going to get educated, if you like? Because what's going to happen? What needs to happen? What needs to happen?
I don't think anyone could argue we need clear policy. We need clear guidance, and there needs to be a realistic proposition put on the table that doesn't just cover oil, liquid fuel, doesn't cover liquid LPG, it covers the whole range. Hopefully we'll have a point where we can discuss hybrids as a stepping stone to get from fossil fuel to renewable technology for off-gas. But in the meantime, we've got BioLPG on the table, we've got HVO, a biofuel, that if it was implemented tomorrow, we could save 90% of carbon emissions on 1.7 million homes in the UK. It's a huge number.
Wow.
And it could happen tomorrow if the government did something about it.
So would I be right or wrong in saying that the government thinks it's easy to kind of decarbonise off-grid and rural homes?
I think they thought it was easy. I think they now realise it's not. It's not the low-hanging fruit that they thought they could just switch that tap off.
Okay, so what an exciting future we've got to look ahead to then. I mean, it is quite extraordinary the way in which they looked at it. there's an education that needs to happen with the consumer as well, isn't there? Because do you think it's going to be consumer driven in order that they want to, you know, we met some apprentices earlier who are passionate about moving forward and are passionate about the planet and so on. Is that what's going to drive it, do we think?
Well, I think the thing about off-grid is that virtually every home off the gas grid is different to the next.
Yes.
And anyone who thinks that off-grid homes are an easy option that must have never visited the countryside. It's absolutely extraordinary.
But what are the options to decarbonise off-grid and rural homes?
Well, as Neil said, I mean, you have to treat them on a one at a time basis, really. Each one's a bespoke job. You don't necessarily want to take the whole journey in one go. I mean, you may want to start with a renewable liquid fuel, and maybe you start with a hybrid solution if you've got very high energy loss from that particular building. There's a whole range of things you could do. You might just start with insulation and take it in small steps. I mean, there are a whole lot of different intervention points when people make changes to their property. It could be as simple as when their boiler needs replacing, or it could be when they've just bought the property for the first time and they're making a lot of renovations to it. So the government needs to have plans for these different intervention points.
Yeah, yes, go on, Sophia.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I mean, and the benefit with the renewable liquid and gaseous fuels is the fact that they are drop-in. So, not having to change the actual infrastructure is a real big benefit, or then having it also readily available on the market from all of the different producers that are here today, makes a big difference to that business case. And I think on the commercial point, as kind of Chris was alluding to earlier, you've got practicalities of how much hot water storage are you actually going to be able to really facilitate at some of these like B&Bs, hotels, holiday caravan parks, etc. These are all different nuances that at the time government was kind of brushing over, but now that's the big blocker. And I think, go on, Chris.
No, absolutely. I mean, the question was around raising awareness. So to raise that awareness, to have the options that are practically feasible, economically feasible, and technically feasible for all the building stock is the obvious choice that would raise awareness naturally, because we are going to hit those elements where maybe a full electrification system hasn't got the infrastructure or not got a storage space. So then what's the next option to follow?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if there's not a second best option, then what do you do?
And to your point around who's responsible, I think there's a mixture of responsibility here. I don't think it's really solely in the hands of one person. I think from a demand perspective, that's what government can do. Government can make demand because they tell people you have to do X, Y, and Z. Now, there's better and worse ways of doing that. We all know that the 2026 ban wasn't going to work in that way. But again, if it was done right in the first place, maybe it actually could have worked. So that point on policy driving consumers is key. However, there's also a really key role on the industries, both the LPG industry and the oil industry, to also make sure that they're promoting and continuing to secure the appetite and growth in that space, just as much as the manufacturers, and also really importantly, the installer market. The installer market are absolutely key. They are the trusted source of information when it comes to replacing your heating system.
Well, we said all along in a number of these debates that the best sales force a manufacturer can have, and also for the consumer point, I trust my plumber. When he comes around, and my question always is, well, if it was your house, what would you do? And that's probably the most common question that anybody asks. And so they need the education first to enable them to educate the consumer, I suspect. And of course, it's not just domestic, as you alluded to. You've got gyms, you've got holiday parks, and God knows what else as well. Go on, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I was just simply going to say, I don't think in terms of messaging from politicians, I don't know if anybody in the audience has actually heard any real discussion about decarbonising heating, let alone off-grid heating. So, I'm not sure that it's penetrating in a policy way, at least not in the political sense. So, I fear we're going to stumble forward rather than really make the kind of progress we need.
And I think I genuinely mean this, I probably trust my plumber more than I trust my local MP as well, because actually I don't know whether they're telling me the truth or not at the end of the day. And sorry, that was an end of political broadcast. And the advantages of renewables fuels like BioLPG and rDME and so on, what just give us a little bit of it. What are the advantages of those?
Yeah, huge advantages. Maybe if I just briefly explain what they are in case you're not familiar with them. So BioLPG or renewable LPG is basically exactly the same as LPG, except it's coming from renewable sources in a kind of oversimplified way. And that means that you can drop it into your boilers, in various applications, whether that's cooking, heating, hot water. What we're particularly interested in at Dimeta is something called DME. And if you I hope you all put deodorant on today, but if you put spray deodorant on, there is a really good chance you've already sprayed some DME on yourself, because it's widely used in the chemical sector and also in hairspray, so maybe hairspray for me.
I wonder what that smell was.
But as I say, DME is very chemically similar to propane, and what we're doing as Dimeta is we're actually looking at business cases for taking things like waste and converting it into DME in order to be able to decarbonise the LPG sector a little bit further, to accelerate it a little bit more. So in terms of the benefits of them, you get the reduced emissions, you also get the continued same benefits that you have on air quality with low NOx, SOx and particulate matter, and also the kind of drop-in nature. So for BioLPG and a blend of DME, you don't need to change anything. For 100% DME, you'd have some dedicated systems, of which Rinnai actually have a prototype DME heater on their stand. So that is also an opportunity for those moving away from fossil fuels too.
This wasn't an overt advert, by the way, because you're trying to get in here.
No, definitely. Well, I was actually going to allude to what Sophia just said. Between Dimeta and Rinnai, we're working on an MOU to bring the downstream appliances that can burn the fuel. So that collaboration is moving to the next stages, where we'll get the pass standard available for appliance manufacturers, so we can make that transition away from LPG to BioLPG and potentially DME over the next few years. So there is a pathway there from the upstream and the downstream appliances to achieve that. And that's been enabled through innovation, which is something we talked about earlier, which is stagnating because of policy.
Okay, and just as BioLPG is a drop-in replacement for LPG, so renewable liquid fuels, as you'd expect, is the same, but for replacement for oil heating. And the particular type, there are various different sorts of renewable liquid fuel, but the one we're particularly interested in is a fuel called HVO, which stands for hydrotreated vegetable oil. It's manufactured mainly from waste, and it can deliver up to an 88% reduction in carbon emissions. We've tested it in 150 off-gas grid buildings already, and the really exciting thing about it is it's a drop-in solution. You can use it in all existing oil heating appliances. So from a decarbonisation perspective, this really answers the big problem. How you make it as easy as possible for the consumer? Well, you simply just change the fuel, and that is, the magic bullet really for the off-gas grid sector.
So how easy would it be to convert traditional systems to these fuels?
So a typical system running in kerosene today,
Sorry, Neil, it's too far away.
you could put up to 30% HVO blend in without changing anything. The commissioning engineer doesn't need to do anything. The aspiration would be to move to 100% HVO, in which case there's no fossil fuel element at all. And that would maybe take a cost of about £500 to maybe change the pump, change an oil line, change a filter, clean out the tank, replace it with the fuel, and reset the combustion. So a much, much smaller cost than having to go to full-scale heat pump, deep retrofit, everything else.
Yeah. Chris, you're nodding along there.
Yeah, well, I'll take it from the sort of gaseous fuel side. From the LPG to BioLPG, as Sophia mentioned, that's pretty much a straight drop-in where the combustion properties, the components are very similar. Then if we moved into blending what Sophia mentioned with dimethylene ether, we can blend a percentage, and we're working on the pass standard now with Liquid Gas UK, WLPGA, so we'll be able to certify products to a gas type, which then we can place them on the market. The really cool thing about that is within the WABI index, it's very similar to natural gas, the way it performs, so we don't have to change a lot of the production lines to produce the product. It's only minor changes in rubbers and elastomers, and then a conversion, and the conversion would be very similar to what it is natural gas to LPG now, so a 10-15 minute conversion, and you're on a renewable gas.
So if the government went ahead with this as an idea, would there be enough fuel to supply homes? Yes.
Yeah, perhaps I should take that one. Yeah, look, the technology is there. I actually, in a separate capacity, I'm chair of the European Advanced Biofuels Coalition. So these are people who are making all different other types of fuels for aviation, for the marine sector, as well as industrial and home heating. And the technologies are there. The challenge is coming back to that policy. That's why we want government to really crack on with this bioenergy consultation and just say, look, this is the sustainability requirements. This is what you have to do. Industry, do your thing. Because that's, at the moment, that's what's holding up the business case in the UK, also in other sectors. And that's where Europe is currently a lot further ahead than we are in this space. And I as a Brit and as somebody who's been working on this for a long time, I really want to see them catch up.
Yeah, and Malcolm, do you have any inside track as far as policy?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about biofuels is the availability of the feedstock. So you need to make sure there's enough feedstock for the fuel you're planning to make. And with a fuel like HVO, there's been dramatic increases in production in recent years, exponential increases. And that's been driven by greater ability to collect the feedstock, which in many cases is used cooking oil and things like that. And there is an issue about whether there will be enough supply. I have to be honest about that, because there are potentially other sectors like transport that are also looking and already in some cases using these types of renewable liquid fuel. So really the issue for government is that in a way it's a policy decision about where the best place for these fuels to go it actually is. Now, we would firmly say that for hard-to-treat off-grid properties, it's absolutely sensible to use it for that kind of application. Now, it's possible that we couldn't do all 1.7 million homes at 100% overnight tomorrow without a firm steer from the government that that's the right thing to do. But I'm confident, in any case, that over time production is going to continue to increase, and we will be able to do that really, and support all the requirements for transport as well.
Sophia?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point, and there's been lots of studies and lots of work that has been done that has showcased the feedstock availability is there, it's commercially there, or it's not there yet, but it does exist. It's just not being utilised commercially. The value chains aren't being developed, again, because they will react to demand. So it all kind of comes around as a bit of a chicken and egg circle. And that's one of the reasons that why we are really interested in waste. Because at the moment, waste is going to landfill, which we want to see less of.
Yeah.
It's either going to very, very inefficient processes for things like incineration, or often also more than not in countries across the world, it's being shipped to other countries and kind of putting the problem somewhere else. So for us, being able to take something that's a problem and convert it into something that is good for hard to abate buildings, applications, etc., we feel is a really good use of the circular economy, and something that isn't going to go away anytime soon. We're only increasing our waste generation, and our recycling rates, etc., are not increasing at the same speed.
We've got a microphone here. If anybody wants to make a comment or ask a question, we've got these experts here. Take advantage of them being here. Would anyone like to make a comment or ask a question? If not, I shall move on. I just want to pick you up, Malcolm, on your point there about consultation, etc., etc. Is there enough consultation that goes on? I mean, who is it with? Because you people are experts. Who's consulting with you?
Well, I mean, if I'm brutally honest, we've found it very difficult to get the attention of government.
Right.
And the reason for that is because DESNZ is fixated with heat pumps. And, I'm going to call a spade, I'm afraid, really. When you actually talk to the relevant department, you're talking to people from the electrification of heat department, not decarbonisation of heat. So you can tell that they come at you with a particular bias. And
that's not going to change anytime soon, by the way, is it?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, and the reality is the majority of homes will probably change to a heat pump at some point in the next 20 or 30 years, probably. But the fact is, not all homes will. And it's great that the government has recognised that, but frankly, I think DESNZ is still somewhat slow to catch up with the need to actually be having these conversations with industry. And this frankly needs to change, because we have got a really good solution, and it is proving very tough to get it over the line.
So, who or how is it going to change? Who's going to change it?
Well, it's got to come from political leadership, and I think that's where the kind of ray of light is starting to happen, because we've had a lot of conversations with individual MPs, people who represent rural constituencies, and they have got consumers now starting to write them letters saying, well, hang on a minute, we can't afford a heat pump, or it's not going to be suitable for our home. what are we going to do? We've even had MPs contact us who live in homes that they can't convert to a heat pump. So
that's got to be the best, actually, hasn't it?
yeah, it is.
Ultimately.
So I think the people who make the decisions are starting to wake up, and once that happens, they will start to talk to the people working within the relevant departments within DESNZ, and hopefully that will lead to a broadening of their thinking around the tools they need to decarbonise heat, and that's what needs to happen.
Sophia, you're looking very cynical.
No, I'm not cynical at all. I completely agree. But I think that there's also a really key kind of step before that as well, which is building upon the good work that's already been done.
Yeah.
And that is really true collaboration across the installer market, across the manufacturers, across the industry and the fuel suppliers and fuel producers, and also all of these sectors. There's so many associations and industries out there, from agriculture to the holiday park and leisure sector, to the food and drink sector, really bringing all of these people together to pull together a very cohesive ask of government, which I think that we managed to do for the 2026 issue, but now for the next stage is really key. So we've got to make sure that we keep communicating and working together and asking questions and sharing information.
Thank you. Malcolm, back to your point. It's all very well writing to an MP, but they're not the ones who do the work. They pass it on to their various departments, and that is like an oil tanker, dare I use that analogy. But moving forward, it's a long, slow process, and it takes time to turn or stop and so on. So, and a lot of MPs are going to be out of their jobs next week. We're going to see new MPs in. So how long, we're going to start again, almost, to a certain extent?
Well, yeah, the election's not come at a particularly good time. I mean, there was a plan for a consultation on off-grid, which we were told would be this summer. That's now going to be undoubtedly delayed. And as you'll rightly say, we're probably going to have a new team in power who we're going to have to really try and educate and bring on side to this. I mean, the good news, though, is that the policy asks are unbelievably simple. I mean, all we need is an equivalent for the road transport fuel obligation for heating, which would really bring down the price of HVO significantly to the end user. And we also need tax to be the same for HVO as it is now for kerosene, because perversely, if you use kerosene, you don't pay any duty at all. But if you use HVO in heating, you have to pay 10 or 11 pence a litre, which is just insane. So if they were to make those two simple steps, and they actually already have the mechanism to do the fuel obligation in the energy bill, because we managed to get that change inserted into the energy bill, which went through Parliament last year. So it's a really easy win for government. And
so why aren't they seeing that? I'm sorry to cut across you. Why are they not seeing that?
Well, I think because...
Who's not advising them?
I think the reason is because the people within inside DESNZ are just tunnel vision, focused on electrification. And maybe in a way you can understand that, and I cut them a bit of slack, because obviously they're looking at the whole problem. And we've got to decarbonise heat in 27 million homes and goodness knows how many other commercial buildings. So you've got a huge task there, and off-grid is a very small part of that. But it's still an important part, and they do need to look at the homes that aren't going to be suitable for a heat pump too.
Yes, Neil.
I just want to pick up the point that you said earlier, Malcolm. I think it's right that DESNZ have to take some time to actually look at all the potential solutions that are on the table. But I think calling a spade, as Malcolm did earlier, the government don't like things, and they don't like technologies anymore that burn stuff. Burning stuff is seen to be bad. Now, whether it's a BioLPG, whether it's a bioliquid fuel, they still have a stigma about burning stuff. And we need to get over that line, because actually putting it in landfill will give off exactly the same amount of carbon emissions as if you burn it. And this is the fact that we can renew this fuel over and over again and keep recycling it actually solves a solution that prevents consumers from having to go into fuel poverty, doesn't have to upgrade any of the systems, and it provides an overnight solution that the government just haven't switched on to yet. And that's the message we need to get over to them.
Right, okay. Let's turn to the installer for a minute. There's going to be more training needed for installers, isn't there? And how easy is that going to be to, in inverted brackets, sell to installers? Because they've got to come off the tools in order to get the training, which means they're earning less money. What's the view on that? Yeah.
Well, for liquid fuels, the answer's there's very little they need to know that they don't know already. And because we've done this really significant trial of HVO, we've learnt all the key things that we need to pass on to technicians. And the vast majority of oil heating technicians are registered with OFTEC. So, we're in good, constant contact with them, and we deal with all the training related to liquid fuels as well. So, we're perfectly placed to do this. And I think this is one of the critical advantages of solutions like this, because we've already got the workforce. We don't need to train thousands of new installers to do this. We've already got the boots on the ground. All you need to do is just to update their skills very slightly. And we've created a manual which we're constantly refining to do that. So we're ready to go, basically.
Ready to rock and roll, as they say. I just think if we were to cast ourselves 12 months forward, and we're all sitting here again, what would you like to have seen the government do over the next 12 months?
Well, I know we keep all alluding to this
I
really
know.
big, important consultation, but for me, it really is just cracking on with that, because as soon as we get...
It's the key to everything.
It's the key to everything, because it just gives the final certainty. We all know we need it. There's, I think, generally across both the consumer market, for domestic and industrial, commercial, we all know there's appetite. We just need government to give that final sign-off, and then things can get moving. And I think this was all of our concerns that we had before the 2026 consultation, was it's just delaying good things from happening. It's not going to, supporting renewable liquid gases or renewable liquid fuels, it's not going to risk the widespread uptake of heat pumps, because they go hand in hand together. So for me, it's delaying a good thing that can, again, really help these hard-to-abate homes and businesses, and also remain competitive with Europe and the US, because Europe is pushing ahead. They've already put the equivalent of this in place from 2040, recognises renewable liquid gases, etc. We're lagging behind.
We're behind.
And we were in front, and I would like to see us come back in front.
Neil?
Yeah, I fully agree. We need the consultation that will drive legislation, and then we can tell industry and the consumer exactly what is going to happen and by when.
Malcolm?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As you'd expect. I mean, Sophia's absolutely right. Get the consultation done and let's get on with the job. I mean, I'd love to come back here in 12 months' time and say from 2025, we're going to be doing this, and it's actually going to be happening.
So will you come back?
I'd be delighted to.
Right,
Yeah,
okay,
you invite me, I'll be here.
Yeah, okay, Chris.
No, Sophia just mentioned a word there, which I'd love to see a policymaker explain, and that is what's classified as hard to abate. If we can classify what's hard to abate, then we're on our way to being able to supply different technologies for different things. It's a word that's just thrown around. We need to qualify what is hard to abate, and I think that's massively important.
As someone who doesn't work in this industry, it seems that listening to you, it's kind of depressing in a way as to how ignorant the government seems to be in terms of not talking to the people who actually know what's happening, what's going on. I mean, how frustrating is that?
I think that's the right word. It is phenomenally frustrating, because we're all in a unique industries,
Yes.
pushing forward, doing the
But everyone
testing,
seems to be on
getting
the
the
same
evidence.
page.
We're all wanting the same. And
Yes.
we're not saying for 1 minute that electrification of heat is a bad thing.
No,
we're
no.
not saying that the heat pumps won't solve
that.
some of the off-gas problems, but it's not the silver bullet. And we need to get the other bullets aligned.
Right. Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, of course. It is incredibly frustrating, and some of the things that have been mentioned is the building level, and the building level is often ignored. See, at Rinnai, we will supply heat pumps, we will supply natural gas, we will supply LPG, we've got advanced developments with hydrogen, but we can go to a building level and see, well, actually, we need a gaseous fuel to satisfy that requirement of the building. And if it's not practical, it's not economical, and it's not technically feasible to use electrification, then there needs to be a backstop available, and this is an obvious fit for it, which unfortunately is continually ignored.
Okay, well, I think before my blood pressure goes off the scale, I'm going to kind of draw a line to this. But look, thank you for coming and sharing with us. I'm sure if you're going to hang around, if anybody's got any questions, they can just grab you for them. But look, let's get together next year. Let's see what consultation has or hasn't happened and what's happened as a result of that. But thank you very much indeed for joining us. Please give them a round of applause to Chris, Malcolm, Neil and Sophia. Thank you.